The senator from Kansas.
Mr. President, thank you. I've lent my voice with my colleagues here in the United States Senate many times, here on the Senate floor and elsewhere back home in Kansas, in condemnation of Vladimir Putin's attack, invasion, the death and destruction that his actions, his sole actions, have taken on the people of Ukraine. But those actions have consequences broader than just within the borders of the independent country of Ukraine. I want today to bring awareness to a pressing consequence coming out of this invasion, and that's hunger. A month ago, Russia, it's the world's largest supplier of wheat, invaded Ukraine. Ukraine is the fifth largest supplier of wheat. Together, they account for about 30% of global exports. This has tremendously exacerbated the already existing global food crisis, and it will only get worse. Coming from a state like Kansas, America's largest supplier of wheat, I can tell you the effects of this invasion will have on the stability of our ag markets here in the United States, and it should be alarming and could prove to be a catastrophic outcome for our global food supply. When there's a shortage of food, one of the things we could do is produce more, but I would tell you that while prices of commodities, of agriculture commodities we grow in Kansas and across the United States have increased, I also would tell you that the input costs, the things that a farmer or a rancher has to purchase in order to produce that crop, to produce that outcome, has increased even more dramatically. And I would encourage the administration, this Congress, to do more in regard to the cost of everything. The increasing cost of food for the American consumer and the absence of food for many around the world can be alleviated by increasing the supply, can be addressed at least in part by increasing the supply. And to help do that, we need to make certain that we increase our own production of oil and natural gas and of fertilizer. The cost of fertilizer is a huge input cost for the Kansas farmer, and we still have tariffs on phosphates coming from Morocco. And the Department of Commerce is contemplating tariffs on nutrients for fertilizer coming from Trinidad and Tobago. Increasing the cost of the inputs of producing food is a very damaging thing to occur and should stop. We need to reduce the price, slow the increase in the price of diesel fuel and fertilizer. Natural gas is the major component of producing fertilizer, and diesel fuel is hugely important. Again, we need to increase the supplies of our fossil fuels to help the farmer survive during these times. Today I wear, on behalf of Kansans, this sunflower pin. It's the state flower of our state, but it also is an important symbol in Ukraine. It's a symbol of the resistance to Putin's invasion. And just as Kansas is the breadbasket of America, Ukraine is the breadbasket of Europe. Ukraine is, as I said earlier, a large grain-producing country, not just in wheat, but a top 10 global exporter of corn, sunflower oil, and other commodities. It provides produce to markets not just in Europe, but to some of the most vulnerable countries throughout the Middle East. According to the magazine The Economist, the last time Egypt raised bread prices, the Soviet Union was still intact. Food stability is essential to political stability. We may recall that it was an increase in food prices that sparked mass protests throughout the Arab world a decade ago. As we have seen in the humanitarian disaster unfolding in Afghanistan and the developing crisis caused by the invasion of Ukraine, it is critical to utilize every tool at our disposal to meet these challenges. And it extends much further than countries we see in the news each day. Currently, 45 million people across 43 countries are on the brink of famine. Hunger isn't an isolated issue. It affects each and every one of us. Prior to this assault, Afghanistan was facing a dire food shortage, with 23 million people going hungry. This will worsen. Putin's assault continues. In Sudan, 87% of the country's wheat comes from Russia and Ukraine. By the end of this year, an expected 20 million people will be food insecure, 1 in 2 of every Sudanese. In Bangladesh, despite progress in recent years, 11 million people are still suffering from acute hunger. In Ethiopia, 20 million people currently require food support, and this will worsen as Putin's assault continues. According to the UN agency chiefs, Yemen is teetering on the edge of an outright catastrophe. The number one driver of hunger on the planet is man-made conflict, according to the World Food Program. As Russia's tyranny continues, this Putin-made war, countries around the globe will teeter on the edge, falling further into widespread hunger. As the co-chair of the Senate Hunger Caucus and a member of the Agricultural Appropriations Subcommittee, which funds Food for Peace and the McGovern-Dole program, what I like to call the Food for Peace and the Dole-McGovern program, combating any threat of hunger is not only the smart thing to do, it's the morally right thing to do to save lives of not only those living in Ukraine, but around the world. In January and again earlier this month, I called on USDA Secretary Vilsack and USAID Administrator Power to release the resources within the Bill Emerson Humanitarian Trust, an emergency international food assistance program to combat global hunger in times of, quote, exceptional need. The Emerson Trust was created in 1980 for a moment just like this, when existing global hunger programs cannot adequately address the prospects of multiple looming famines. As both the immediate and long-term effects of Ukraine's agriculture sector become clearer, the United States with the rest of the world should work to quickly provide the necessary commodities through sale or donation to meet countries' unsatisfied food and commodity needs. Doing so will help alleviate a greater humanitarian crisis than has already been caused by the unprovoked invasion, and will help foster political stability in food-insecure countries. We are seeing the worst of evil, Putin's invasion of Ukraine, and the tremendous cost, humanitarian cost, loss of freedom cost by that invasion. We can also see the best in humanity, helping a starving world to be fed. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Baldwin.